Today I'm going to show you how I balance kick and bass when I'm mixing. I'm recovering from COVID, so excuse my bad voice. Why should you listen to me? I'm a producer and mixing engineer from Perth, Australia. Songs I've worked on have over 7 million streams. My own catalogue of instrumental music gets like 150,000 streams a month. Just in case you were like, who's this guy? I know those aren't huge statistics, but just thought I'd throw them out in a weird, humble brag. But sometimes I see people in YouTube videos show their credibility, so there you go. I wonder if I'll ever do that again. Alright, so this is a song that I'm working on. So what I've done with the bass, in case you're wondering, is I've used the Mini V by Arturia, and then I've run it through a DBX 165A, I had to remember what it was called, and I've printed that, so this is not active. So as a quick rundown, bass and kick can be kind of hard sometimes because they both exist in a very similar space. Due to this, there's a lot of people who take different opinions on how you can make them kind of sit together nicely. I'm going to go over 3 different methods that I use and just kind of show you the process. Well, I guess there's a 4th method. Let's start with the 4th method. That's just volume. If you get the volume right, they tend to sort of exist okay. Like there will be problems, but they will work. You just have to think about it in terms of, do you want the bass louder or the kick louder? Which one do you want to be doing? Like the kind of big talk, and the other one sort of the little sibling kind of in that relationship. I'm just going to solo the drums and then the bass. I think I liked it more when the bass was lower than the kick. So the kick is coming through, it's punching, and then the bass is sort of underneath it. And if you think about that from a kind of transient perspective, like that makes sense. Kick is like, it hits and then it disappears. The bass is like long and held out in this case. And so because of that, like you don't necessarily want this thing that's just going to be really present, because it's kind of drony, might muddy up things. Like there's not a lot of movement. The drums on the other hand are punching and moving. Having those a little bit forward in like volume terms, I think is probably smart. Okay, that is not why you're here. I'm sorry, I'm sounding worse as I'm coughing. I haven't spoken today, I've just been mixing. All right, trick number 1, if you want to call it a trick, is sidechain compression. So I'm using a Studio One. This will work in any DAW. First, sidechain the kick input. And now I'm just going to turn down the threshold until I start getting a bit of sidechain here. Oops, need to turn that on. Cool. I'm not going to go too hard on the threshold because I don't actually want too much compression. I just want dipping. Like I don't want overall compression on the bass. I'm going to click auto and adaptive because like, I don't know, the Studio One, it just always sounds pretty good when I do that. And then I'm going to move the sidechain gain. We could probably dial in the attack and release a little bit better. You can tell the difference, right? Like without it, it's just, when you have it on, it moves, it pulses, it just feels a bit more musical. It's more vibey. All right, that's option 1. Option 2 is another kind of side chaining, but I'm using a tool called Track Spacer, which is kind of like EQ side chaining, I guess. Sometimes I don't know how to explain things, but basically if sidechain compression is you're feeding in a sound and then the volume of that sound, the voltage of that sound is knocking the other sound down, essentially it's compressing it. This kind of side chaining is essentially you're feeding it a frequency and voltage, and then it's using the frequency and voltage to then dip another frequency and voltage. So it's working in frequency land as opposed to volume land. I think that's a good way to describe it, to my understanding anyway. So again, sidechaining the kick in to the bass with track spacer. Soothe, you can do something similar, but it is a bit different. I'm just going to crank the amount knob, and then I'm going to dial in the low and the high cut. So we'll just like hear what it does on 100%. Move this higher down. And so this is also where you can get a bit more creative and I guess intentional with what you're trying to achieve. Do you want just the sub of the kick to come through? Do you want the like higher end of the kick to come through and leave the bass? Like you can really dial that in. I'm just going to do a pretty broad stroke, like just kind of generally the kick. And in some ways, I think this is a lot more subtle than just compression. You won't necessarily hear it pulsing as much, but the kick will just be a bit more present. And you obviously don't want 100%. I tend to operate kind of 10%. You just kind of feel how it interacts. It's just a bit better. I can just hear the kick poking through a lot more, so that definitely achieves what we want. And the third of these is kind of similar to track spacer, but the sort of old school way to do it is using something like Pro Q, or just a EQ that has an analytical sidechain. So what I've done is I've just put Pro Q on the kick, and then I've got Pro Q on the bass. And if you go down here, analyzer, pre plus post, and I find the kick, and I quit out, what should happen is when I play it, I will see masking frequencies. So frequencies that are the same. And so the red is the kick, and I'm dealing with the bass. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to dip the bass in places that the kick exists so that the kick is more prominent. So that's kind of the third. Let's try to find something a bit higher. So that works pretty well as well. Obviously, you know, having a machine doing it for you is a little bit faster. This, you have to dial it in a little bit more. But honestly, all of these work really well. Sometimes there's a time and a place that will be better for one option over another. Sometimes you'll combine all of the options. You can definitely swap this around. I was dealing with the bass and letting the kick do its thing. You can flip that script and deal with the kick and let the bass do its thing. Just really depends what you want to be more present or louder. You know, there's a lot of different things that you might be trying to actually achieve, and then we kind of use these tools to sort of do that. But I hope you found this helpful. If you did, hit like, hit subscribe, and comment something nice below, or just a smiley face, or hate on me. Do it. The algorithm doesn't know the difference. If you use Studio One or Logic, I've got some free presets. I made a Logic vocal preset. Got a bunch of free Studio One presets available. You just need to enter your name and email and off you go. They're pretty fun. There's a bunch of videos on my channel breaking those things down. If you're looking for a mixing engineer or a producer and you make pop or indie rock, I operate in that space a lot, so feel free to go check out my website and hit me up. Have a great day. I'll catch you next video. Goodbye.